Oh, for frick's sakes, why did I make it in this format? Well, hi, this is a different person entirely. I have made an essay. Let's begin. So, I don't even have myself subscribed to them. I'm going to subscribe, and then they made this 3 days ago. Let's find out what they have to say.
Incoming dishes!
So,
Spaceships are great, but what if you wanted a creature that could move through space without one? Let's sort it out. We'll start with the problem. Designing a creature that can move itself through space is tricky because it's very difficult to generate thrust out there without an engine. This is because what we call the vacuum of space is almost entirely devoid of matter and exerts extremely low pressure.
but not completely devoid of matter, and also definitely not devoid of energy. We'll get to that.
What this means in practical terms is that there's very little to push against to get yourself going. Let's compare it to swimming. When you make the right motions with your arms and legs underwater, you're able to move forward because you're pushing the water back. Water
Yeah.
is nice and dense, and you can feel that resistance you're working against when you're moving through it. But if you made those same movements outside the water, you'd find that they don't do much to move you through air. But why? Air has a much lower density than water, and what that means on a microscopic level is that particles are not nearly as closely packed. So it's not able to offer that same resistance to the forces you're exerting that allows you to be pushed in the opposite direction. In order to move in air, you'd need to have a body that's as lightweight as possible and with arms that are able to capture and push against a lot more air than human arms can. So on Earth, we have birds and other creatures that are built to do just that and fly through the air like we swim through water. But the space in space is not filled with air. It's filled with extremely sparse particles of things like hydrogen and
And energy, the EM field specifically, which you can use a lot of to keep yourself moving, but we'll keep going.
helium plasma. So if a bird tried those same movements in space, they'd have the same issues that we
Make it
have
coffee.
above water. As much as they flapped their wings, the low density environment simply wouldn't offer enough resistance to get them anywhere. Also, they'd freeze and suffocate and probably expand a bit and ultimately die. But I'm not going to worry too much in this.
Like, just imagine if you have a robotic bird or whatever else that doesn't care about freezing or expanding or whatever else with that stuff, or a kind of like creature that. Have you ever seen those weird tube centipedes that just crawl through the sand and they don't do anything except for react to wind motion basic amounts, and then they just keep going? Um, it's a very neat project that I saw someone do, and I was like, oh, that's definitely cool. But anyhow, can't do that in space. So what else?
Video about biological adaptations to get around that kind of death because in this video we're focused on movement. I'm going to start with what I think is the
Yeah, like if you needed to, all you really need to do is have electrical movement and the body to be able to have certain substances move through it, perhaps, to consider yourself an organism. And you can do that with a lot of dry stuff, technically. It's just you'd have to have ways of motion that maybe include, I don't know, using sound or using like um, kind of like a vascular system, but again, you can work with solids. Imagine if you had a kind of, you could use bellows. Yeah, that works with just gases and stuff. And again, in space, that's pretty cool. I didn't even get into this with my comment. We're already expanding our brains!
most realistic and grounded option, which is to build your creature like a solar sail. So a solar sail works by reflecting sunlight. In the same way a traditional sail is pushed by wind, this sail is pushed by light bouncing off its surface. In order for this to work, your creature would need to be as lightweight as possible, with sails that extend many times wider than its main body. You'd probably also want it to be able to make adjustments in speed and direction. Maybe your creature has a muscular structure that allows it to change the angle and overall surface area of the wings, or maybe the wings themselves can change in opacity to alter the amount of light being reflected. When researching for this video, I was particularly inspired by the glass-winged butterfly, which does just that, but for camouflage. If you wanted to expand this idea even further, you could design a creature that's able to create elaborate patterns across its surface that it uses to communicate, since...
Okay, imagine if you're able to change the direction of the crystals that react to light without even being a shape. Your body could then exert electromagnetic response that then changes the shape of or the orientation of these crystals, that then just makes you move because light is going through you. I didn't even think of this before I started the stream, but it is so possible. And all you need is energy and crystals. Oh, that's so cool. So the crystalline entity is real. Hashtag.
Any communication that relies on sound would be ineffective out there. So let's talk pros and cons. This method of travel requires little to no energy from the creature itself. In theory, it could angle itself in a direction.
Gravity is a type of sound.
And then just let itself hibernate until some change in its environment
Shut up! Gravity is a type of sound. It is a type of sound. Not audible sound, perhaps, but a type of sound. Vibration is sound. That's all it is. So... yeah, gravitational waves are a type of sound. Well, we're not even there yet. Hold on, we gotta fix things, cause fuck you.
It to wake up either because it had arrived at its destination or it was time to change course. This is great because it allows our creature to embark on extremely long voyages and even be found in deep space. Since it's not reliant on fuel, the only thing it has to worry about running out of is whatever is required to keep its vital functions in order. Another pro of this method is that your creature can potentially reach some incredibly high speeds because a star's constant light will keep it accelerating and the extremely sparse particles in space will generate...
Yeah, as long as you're able to keep on reacting to something moving at the speed of light, then you could essentially move towards the speed of light. And Veritasium already made a video talking about how you can move faster than the wind, which is the thing that's pushing you. If you can do that with light, Winky Face, technically you can't, because what they did was pull the air through. So future light doesn't do that quite well, but you could make a kind of light conveyor belt which allows the light to then interact with you, which forces you to lurch forward. That's a real effect, and no one talks about it much. But you can do it with just the light hits you, and then you're forced to lurch forward. Just because any distant star is hitting you with light, any amount, you're going to have a small amount of tugging forward constantly. Did not even say this in the comments. We're not even getting to my comment, and I'm already, like, far beyond and expanding.
Very little of the friction that would be necessary to slow it down. However, it will accelerate to those speeds very slowly, meaning that this is never going to be a creature that can...
Okay, that's the problem, is, again, you're using a push method. The problem with the push method is that you're not working with what's coming at you, which is at a constant rate increasing, which I did mention in the comment, that the faster you go, if you're pulling what's in front of you behind you, then the faster you go, the more you interact with, the more you have to accelerate yourself with, which means you're at an accelerating pace. And technically, there's no reason you can't just also have a burst to get yourself started. We'll get to that.
Just zip around, start and stop, and change direction readily. Also, since it's reliant...
Yeah, true. Solar sails can't just start and stop with stuff. They kind of really don't have a lot going for them in that regard, because you would have to... Well, okay, what you could do, essentially make your structure into something that does not reflect light anymore and instead absorbs it. So then you're not gaining any more momentum from the light. That doesn't stop you, but also if you're big enough, the stuff that's hitting you is going to stop you. So you can stop. It's just, and they mentioned this, but it's going to be slow and it's going to be hard to get started again with that method.
On starlight as its primary means of propulsion, its ability to accelerate is limited by its distance from the source. As it gets further away, the push gets weaker and
Inverse
weaker
square
until
law.
gradually it's non-existent, and over a very long time, the tiny amount of friction it's exposed to on its way would slow it down. You could reduce this limitation by having it fold up into a...
But also, again, if you have an energy reactive body, then you can just do whatever you want going through space, and then automatically any amount of energy that you're interacting with, you can simply just push, and then that energy braking system just comes into play, and then you're able to have yourself stop really quickly. Genuinely quickly. But again, you need to exert energy, and you need to have energy to exert. You need to have electromagnetic um, mesh. The more surface area, the better. So the more energy, like imagine if you, again, we've already, this is real. If you have a magnet, you put it through a copper pipe, the electric field generated, right, stops it and slows it down before it gets to the bottom. So as you're going fast, if you transform the idea of magnet copper pipe function to a scale, then you're able to stop on a dime with that stuff. And that's just using materials. Um, so like, how does that work in space? Well, in space, there's a ton of energy that's going around you. So if you can simply put on the brakes and turn on the electric field versus the magnetic field you're going through is going to stop you. That just happens. You don't need like copper pipe to be the thing. You're basically the copper pipe. The magnetic field is everywhere in space, and you can just interact with it, pretend it's the magnet, and then just stop. Also, you can have onboard magnets that you just push through, and then as they push through with one direction momentum, the copper pipe function forces it to slow down without exerting any energy on the pipe itself. So you could stop yourself with that. Or technically have yourself be moving forward. And I mentioned something like that in my comment. We'll get to that.
Sharper shape once light reaches low enough levels. But if a critical error in its intended trajectory did leave it too far away from any new sources of light, it could end up stuck and there'd be very little it could do about it. Overall, this guy is great for long...
So it's great for long distances. It's great for anything near the source of light, anywhere near a solar system. Once you get out of the solar system, you're interacting with one, you're not interacting with the emptiness of solar system space, which is actually more empty than outer space. Outer interstellar space is filled with nebulous gases and stuff that is normally blown around by the sun, light, and that solar winds. So you have more empty space in our solar system than the area around it. It's like thick soup out there that you could just suck up and move yourself with. Fun. Do that. But only because, again, we are in a galaxy. And yeah, the sun is just pushing everything else around. We are in a more vacuum space than the space surrounding it. But I gotta be back. Wait, are you still here? Had like an entire meal and a conversation, and I've made love to 15 people. Just kidding, none of that happened. But I mean, it seemed like a long time. Also, I didn't put anything in my coffee, my chocolate milk. I'm gonna have to microwave it for like 30 seconds to get it back up to heat. But anyway, what was I talking about? I don't know why it's hard. Okay, so the thing about the EM field, it is everywhere. You can just work with it. You can just interact with it. You can just piggyback whatever is coming towards you and then shoot yourself forward with that interaction. That's a crazy thing. Pulling engines are not standard, okay? The standard engine is always pushing. But if you see a motorboat, are you pushing or are you pulling yourself through the water? Both can be considered to be the truth, and both technically, because you are cycling stuff through yourself, is what is happening. A plane definitely is a pulling engine. It's not pushing. You're pulling yourself forward. But there's pushing involved, but it's mostly the fact that you're pulling. So the fact that we think about in space, you can't do pulling, is, I think, a failure on our part in some ways.
Distance travel, but not so great for local travel, and that's where our next idea comes in. Build your creature like a balloon. I consider this to be the second silliest way to get through space for a couple of reasons, but what keeps it pretty reasonable is that it's loosely based on how rockets work and also somewhat inspired by the bombardier beetle. So we've talked about how in space you can't generate thrust just by pushing because there's virtually nothing to push against. However, you can create thrust by pushing something that's inside a capsule out of the capsule. As long as something is exiting your creature from one end, it will be moved in the other. So put simply, some sort of digestive process perhaps allows your creature to produce a controlled chemical reaction that creates.
Yeah, if you make, like I mentioned in the comment eventually about you can make matter by shaking quarks. The shaking basically is you separate them and then recombine, and then also separate the ones you separated, immediately plucking those off as you create the new ones. So you're just constantly just spewing out quarks. I mentioned this in the comment, but it's like we'll get there. The point is you can make matter out of basically nothing. The the background microwave, the microwave background, whatever.
A gas. That gas could be released immediately or expand internally until the creature is ready to push itself forward. Because of space's low pressure, gases expand rapidly. You've probably heard that if you try to hold your breath in space without a spacesuit, the expanding oxygen will basically rip your lungs apart. That means your creature probably doesn't need to be able to produce much gas to generate thrust. Keep in mind that if you want this emission to be less of an inert gas and more of an explosion, you'll need to be able to somehow introduce oxygen into the equation, since oxygen is required for combustion and isn't readily available in space like it is on Earth.
Okay, so question about expanding oxygen. The thing with you going into a thing where you have different amount of pressure, right, and space is in basic null pressure. It's not any amount of force on anything whatsoever. The gas is basically able to bounce its way out of your body. It's bouncing against itself so much that it can just expel itself. And we can know this the way it would normally work. When we say it's going to put in some brown sugar. Ironically, I'm going to put in chocolate ice cream that I have in the fridge, which is not going to be that cold, but it's going to be kind of milk. That's my idea of a yummy time right there. Just pour some of that in there. Because I'm just using the last bit of my ice cream in the fridge to thaw it, and then I'm using it in like a short period of time because I know it's going to spoil. But yeah, because I don't have a lot and I gotta get it off the container somehow, and being in the freezer doesn't help with that. Anyway, the the thing is, you can make materials and make things that are able to then make more than what you started with. But it involves some crazy amount of power that usually is referred to as like extreme amounts and stuff, and it's just not. It's only highly theoretical, or it's only like it's understood, but it's also like very power draining to do it. So it's less likely that we will be able to make a atomic tuning fork. But if we did, then all it takes is the structure, a bit of magnetism or sound to make the vibrations of the fork, which, generally speaking, the size of a quark is like literally a component of an atom, right? So if you have a mesh of matter, you can shake quarks out of that mesh. So for every cubic nanometer of, and I didn't get into this in the comments, but I did theorize a bit before I started the video. For every cubic nanometer of material, you can make a volume of easily, what is it? Because of the size of atomic nucleus is about 10 to the, or it's 1/10 of a nanometer, right? So for every cubic nanometer, you're working with 10 by 10 by 10. So you can have 1,000 grid, which won't be 1,000, it'll be more like 50, because you have to have actual matter to begin with and then shake it. And so the structure would be maybe 20% is actually more generous. So for every cubic nanometer, you would have the ability to make 20 quarks per shake. How fast is a jiggle? I'll call it a jiggle because I know that Tyler False says shakes, referring to atomic stuff, and maybe it's the same thing. I don't know, but we're going to call it a jiggle. So for every jiggle, you can make 20 quarks. How many jiggles per second? Well, we can work with... Obviously, in order to do this, you have to have high frequency, so high amount of wobbling in order to make them split apart. They need to split apart to the order of... I forget how far you need to split quarks apart, and then they just make new quarks. But compared to their size, I would imagine it has... I wish I knew. But anyhow, regardless, you can do like as fast as you like when it comes to the jiggling. So we can work with terahertz, and then for that you would be able to make 1/20th of a terahertz worth, however that makes sense. What if we go even faster? Holy crap, I didn't think of that. What if we went well, if we went at the speed of electrons, right? That kind of frequency, a quadrillion per second is required. Therefore, if we're working at that frequency, which we can do, we've already done it, we can work with a quadrillion shakes per second. Every nanometer cubed making 20 quarks per shake is 20 quadrillion quarks per second per nanometer cubed of atomic tuning fork. If you were to scale that, a nanometer is extremely tiny. We can scale this up. We're not even done yet. So, starting with the fact that you can make 20 quadrillion quarks per second per nanometer cubed. This is real, by the way. This is not fiction. I have to keep repeating that. This happens. So, okay, if we can make 22 quadrillion quarks per nanometer cubed, understand that you're only using 3 quarks to make 1 proton, right? Let's say you're able to feasibly, efficiently utilize. Now, I did that with a 20% density per nanometer cubed of matter doing the shaking, which means 80% of that matter area is emptier space. And that emptier space allows you to then, if you can, constantly push those quarks out of the nanometer cubed area into processing, which involves possibly a Bose-Einstein condensate. Don't quote me on that. It might not be necessary. You don't necessarily need to freeze them, but if you could, which you probably can, the Bose-Einstein condensate can then collect all of those quarks and make them into matter. That is, physical substance. How much matter? Well, per nanometer cubed, at a quadrillion frame rate, which is electron ratios. Again, take that number, divide it by 3, and then for a margin of error, divide that in half, and we're talking about 20 quadrillion reduced, well, divided by 6. So 3 quadrillion hydrogen particles per second per nanometer cubed. 3 quadrillion hydrogen, or 3 quadrillion, we're just talking about the protons. The other amount of matter that you're making, you could technically already be making into neutrons, which allows for further fusion, which allows for further enrichment of matter to make even better stuff like helium and whatever other matter you want. Literally anything. If you have no electrons involved, you can just take the proton neutrons clumps of the quarks, compress them into whatever shape you want, using sound to control the neutrons and electromagnetism to control the protons. I'm jumping forward in the comment. I don't care. I mentioned it somewhere in this gigantic thesis. Like, holy frick, what was I on? I said so goddamn much, this is not even fiction. I want someone to listen. I copied this into a Google document. If it gets deleted, I have it. So, also this video exists. So there you go. But anyhow, shake the proverbial tree and you get hydrogen out. And the possibility of turning, if you need to turn protons into neutrons, you can do that by adding certain bits to it. I think it can turn into a neutron degeneracy or something. Right. You can force that to happen, and then you just have as many neutrons as you want. Imagine being able to just 3D print neutronium at the rate of a certain amount per... again, we're talking about a nanometer. Isn't that like a millionth of a meter? Now imagine a cubic meter. No one wants to do that. Imagine a square meter of the nanometer thick layer, just one layer of this tuning fork material. Instead of a cubic nanometer, we now up it to a million by a million. That's a square nanometer. A million again, that's a cubic nanometer. If you had a cubic meter or a meter cubed of this material that is the tuning fork, well, your electronics is going to be a bummer and stuff. It's going to be hard to control all of that. Let's say that you don't do that and you still have to use like half the density towards your production and the other half towards the controlling of all of the sheets of whatever you're working with, right? So you start off with we started with a cubic nanometer making 3 quadrillion hydrogen or single protons per second. Because we said half of it might be viable, depending on the system. What if half of it isn't viable? What if all of it was viable? Right? I'm working off of, like, let's be generous here instead of, like, let's be generous. Conservative? What's the word? Let's not assume perfect efficiency. Let's assume the least efficient thing possible. Even if you were at 100% of efficiency, this system would still give you trillions of hydrogen per second, per nanometer cubed. So, again, a cubic meter of this material, the atomic tuning fork, a real thing. No one's done it, but it's a real thing. It'll be discovered eventually. I don't care. Yes. It's like a crystal or something. Not even kidding. It could be a crystal. The time crystal is a similar thing where it just shifts back and forth, and all you have to do is do something like that, and then tuning it with... I don't think you can work with electron-based, like, quadrillion frames per second frequencies. Let's say you have less, like half of that frequency. You're still working with 20. Instead, now you have 10. And now instead of 3, you have 1.5 quadrillion protons per second. Yeah, I don't care. That's still a lot per cubic nanometer of this material. So again, I can't. The thing is, a machine like this, who cares about how much energy you're making? Forget about how much energy you're using to make the machine work. Because you have to make the thing. Well, actually, it is comparable. We have already a tube that is making X-rays with specific electron beams, and all it takes is making the electron beams, so it's actually not that power intensive. We already are doing this. So imagine doing that, but constantly, to making the X-ray beams out of the electron spectrum stuff. It gets to be a quadrillion frames per second, which is how fast you need to visualize X-ray, to visualize electrons motion. Electrons move 22 quadrillion atomic width per second. So that's why it's very, you gotta go into the quadrillion range in order to see them, which is why they're doing that in the spectrum thing that I saw in a video earlier, in another video I responded to. This video is going into my inspiration again. I'm gonna have to, inspiration and science me. So there you go. But I'm also gonna have to put in the description. I've already forgotten about the previous video that I had to put in the description, but it's in both of them. So inspiration could be anything. Science me is anything. So it's like, it's easy for me to find out which video it is because of that. Anyway, a million by a million by a million, right? All of those dimensions combined is a million, which is, if you were to put it, millions is so stupid. Million is really a billion, because the million, or the single digit, is the thousandth space, where you're using 3 sets of zeros. That would be that is genuinely what should be a million. Thousand is what should, because that represents one set, right? After that, you go to a billion, which is 2 sets. But instead, every time you think of a million, you have to add the 1000 set in your thought processes. So million is 6 set, which means go to 6, remove 1, that is the notation. So quintillion is a million. So a quintillion, oof, that's a big number. A quintillion hydrogen per second. What does that really give us in forms of matter? Well, I'm pretty sure a quintillion of anything is going to give, but how dense is hydrogen, right? Well, we already know that. But how dense can you pack hydrogen? That's the real key. So if I were to stop and then look at a cubic meter of atmospheric hydrogen for some reason. Okay, so meter cubed is a cubic meter, or 1 meter cube, is about 100 liters of a thousand liters of stored hydrogen. Very significantly in mass, energy, content, depending on the pressure of the gas or liquid. And I mean, something a cubic meter is point. So we're generating 0.08 kilograms of hydrogen per second per cubic meter. No, that's not right. Hold on. That's not what it is. The correct oh God, what how many particles? That's why how much what? Um do they say? Um oh God. Yeah, liters of stored hydrogen doesn't mean anything to me until I find out how many, like what I wanted to find out is not how much it, like, yeah, you're using a cubic meter of space, but you're generating a quintillion, or at a high estimate, 3 quintillion hydrogen per second per cubic meter with this machine. That's including electronics. It's not just generative matter. We used half of the matter, so it would be okay. It would be 1.5 quintillion. But again, what a silly question of how many hydrogen per um how much hydrogen per kilogram? No, I don't want to know that. Fuck you. How much? How? No, I want to know how many. That's the right word. Stop your weird L buttons. How many hydrogen atoms, atoms? Okay, so this is good. We have 10 to the, okay, so per kilogram is not the right word. Per 0.08 What a strange question. Um, so in other words, for a cubic of hydrogen, which is the liters or whatever ounce, it's something to the 10 to the 25 hydrogen. What is 10 to the 25? Well, we just said we're doing 10 to the 6 hydrogen per second. So you can store it. Okay, here's the thing, right? We're generating 10 to the 6 hydrogen per second, right? Per cubic meter. According to this, the amount that we can store of the hydrogen, well, obviously we're going to generate the quarks, push them to the side, and then make the hydrogen, which can be like the other half of the material, which can then be shunted off as hydrogen or liquid hydrogen or whatever else. Mass to grams is like, I don't care about that. I'm looking for the amount of atomic particles per. I don't want to know. Wait, no, I don't need to know. No, the number of. To find the total number of atoms. 10 to 20. 6 10 to 23. So the answer is 4.78 10 to 25. Okay, so we're not going to explode from this machine. We're fine. um, the machine can't make more than we can handle. That's good. So the atomic tuning fork, although you were thinking in the realm of quadrillion, and quadrillion is, or quintillion, we're still in the ballpark of what we can naturally move and store. So so to be clear, in order to fill 10 to the 25. Wait, am I wrong about some of the math? Hold the phone. Oops! I skipped a step. Thanks. Thanks for that. No, I felt it. Yeah, no. Let's go back to a cubic nanometer. I said that was the 1.5, or the 3 hydrogen, or the one, it was the 20 quadrillion quarks per second per cubic nanometer. Oh, I completely skipped a step. Okay. Um, okay, so it's um nanometer to meter is 10 to the minus 9. Okay. Cube cubic? Can we cube this? Does it matter? No, we can't cube it. Um well, if we did do a cubic method, then again, you just take that and 27? No. It's this per meter equals a length. Okay. Yeah, no, it would be, what? No. it would be not. It would be minus. It would be 9. Okay, something to the power of 9 in one makes one line of this. It multiplied by itself is 9 times 9, so 81. Let's do some quick maths here. We'll just do it, the cubing. So it's basically 9 times 9 times 9. 9 cubed is 729. Oh! Oh no! That's 10 to the power of 729. And we're already working in quadrillions. I'm not shitting you. Oh, that's not good. Is that how that works? Can you just do that with zeros? Yeah, basically, I think, right? If you do a cube, it's of 10. It's 10 times 10 times 10, which is 1,000. So, yeah, if you cube the... Oh no! That's not good! We're gonna explode. Okay, let me explain. Oh my god. The atomic tuning fork on a small scale is the nanometer cubed equals 20% of its volume is devoted to being a atomic tuning fork that holds the quarks and separates them at a frequency of a quadrillion per second, which then shakes them, makes 20 quadrillion quarks. Those get transformed in another system into a third of their mass easily. So we're working with 20% of the cubic nanometer scale to do this. It's a rough estimate. To be generous, or on the conservative side, or whatever. Oh, we are so going to explode. So let me get back to this. We're talking about. Wait. No. Okay. We're talking about. Why does it feel like it's not right? Is it? Okay, let me explain more. So again, we're talking about the nanometer. And if you're talking about a nanometer as a cube, and then you expand that into meter cube, it's the number to the power of this number of nanometers in a meter cube. Is that not right? 729, or the number to the power of 729? Am I wrong about that? I feel like it should be wrong. I feel like that can't be correct, right? That a cubic meter, it translated into nanometers. Why don't I just ask? Cubic. Okay. No, I am totally stupid. For some reason. Wait, why? Why does that not seem like it's correct? Because 9 times 9 is 27. That's a square. That's not a cube. Why does it feel completely wrong? Wait. When dealing with powers, you don't work the same way? Okay. We're still not in good territory because 27 is bigger than 25. If you remember. Okay. A cubic meter of hydrogen is 10 to the 25. And we're still not there yet. It's a nanometer cube to... Okay, here's the reason why the other 9 doesn't take place, because the nanometer is already cubed. That's why. It already has 3 dimensions, so you're not... That's the intuition that I didn't take into account, because you already did a 3 times of it times itself thing to make the nanometer. It's an intuition that I'll have to adapt, because holy crap, that's stupid of me. Work is going to be playing a movie soon. I kind of want to watch that. But anyhow, so here's the problem that we have. We still have a problem, because for every nanometer cube, we're able to make quadrillions of quarks. 20 quadrillion quarks. Then we're able to make out of that. So in a cubic space of area, we're able to have... Well, okay, here's the way that we solve this. Just make your containment bigger, obviously, than the generator. The shaker is just a cube inside of a bigger empty box. The bigger empty box fills instantly, every second. How big of an empty box? I don't know. According to this, it would have... According to this... Well, it would have to be 10 to the second power, or 10 to 2, power of 2. Is it the power of 2 or is it the power of 3? Frick, I'm bad at this. The difference is 10 to the power of 25 hydrogen versus 10 to the 27 cubic meter is the size of what we're working with already. Wait, no, I'm dumb. Wait, no, the 25 is less than the 27 that we're working with. You're forgetting the thing I'm forgetting is that we're also making it per cubic nanometer is the 20 quadrillion quarks that we're working with. That's with 80%, that's with 20% density. We're not even full density for the atomic tuning fork. So I'm trying to think of how far this goes. Okay, so it goes hard. The full thing being 80% dense means we have a lot of empty space inside of all of this. The structure is only 20% of the mass of a 10 to the 27 or a cubic meter or whatever. 20% of the mass of a cubic meter is used to make, again, it's 10 to the 27 times quadrillion. What is quadrillion again? Well, you take the number, which is 4, you add the thousandth space, it is 5 sets of triple zeros. So 5 times 3. So 10 to the 15 times 20 quarks per second for a cubic meter generator. Now imagine instead you just had a sheet, right? One layer of nanometer stuff. It's only 10 to the 9, which is again only that. Oh, this cubic stuff feels wrong because volume is something. Anyway, who was it? Yeah. I anticipated that. Okay. That was a good drink. At 20% density, you just add the powers together. Right. So it's 27 plus 15, which is 30, 40, 10 to the 42 quarks. So then we take that, 1/3 of that is the hydrogen. We start with that and then we go there. So then 1/3 of that No, that's not even how that works. That's just it times it's 10 to the 42. We reached 42. Guys, we have the answer for everything. It is 42. I'm not even joking. I couldn't even make this up if I wanted to. This is funny. Because we added the the speed of electrons, then the speed of and the ratio of a cube, and that's 42. I didn't even think about that until just now. That's funny. Okay, so also I need to update um, a file I have. So anyway, when's the movie happening? It's happening now, I think. I don't think they started at 12. I think they started at 1. Yeah, I don't really care about seeing a movie, although it'd be a good movie, I think. Oh, it'd be nice to see it. I'm in a thing. Okay, so we still have a problem. All right, so we have many solutions to this problem. One, don't run it for a full second. Run it for a part of a second, or just have it shake, and then the area needs to be big enough to hold 10 to the 42 hydrogen. 10 to the 40, no, 10 to the 42 quarks. We need to process all of that. It would be easier and better if you had it spaced out in sheets, and then you don't even have to worry as much about that, and then when it would compress into hydrogen, and it would just like immediately shunt itself to storage. Yeah, it's possible that you could make. Now, what again? It's still 10 to the 42, but instead of times 20, it's times 6. It's a rough estimate. It's a it's a conservative estimate. So it's still 10 to the 42 times 6, or as yeah, that's how they put it. They put it as the 6 and then the 10 to the 42. Yeah, that's right. Right, so then we just need a space for 10 to the 42. And if 10 to the 25 fits in 1 cubic meter, 10 to the 50 fits in. No? Oh, frick. Okay, hold on. There's gotta be an answer in here somewhere. E. God, I wish that I could change this number. Please stop copying, you dick. Change this into a 2. 2E27. Oh, okay. No, that doesn't work. 0, 0.5. Okay. Half the amount. 2.5. 2.5E. 1 equals 1E. I have 29. 120. Um, So if we have, the problem is I want to do the opposite conversion where it's volume reversed, where you start with the one and you go into the other. So if I, just say this instead, say 1, then it's 1 plus 27. So 2 cubic meters is only this. So the power is, yeah, I mean, it's 10 to the different, well, yeah, the difference between 27 and 42, which we already said is 15. 10 to the 15 cubic meters. Okay, so instead of doing any of that, fuck me, we're not doing that. And we're just not making a cubic meter machine. Instead, we'll just make a cubic nanometer machine. Simple as fuck. And then all you need is maybe the cubic meter confinement, which might work. Because if you're only making 10 to the 15 particles per cubic nanometer of an atomic tuning fork machine, at a conservative estimate, then you don't have to worry. Don't scale up the tuning fork, scale up the confinement. Obvious, it's so much easier that way. Yeah, keep your jiggly bits small, please. Okay, so what happens is you're generating like a cubic meter. You're generating like, I don't know how to put it. It's hard to explain to my brain how this works. I think it's half of a cubic meter, or how do you put it? It's like if you were to divide the cubic meter in half or something of hydrogen per second from a nanometer of this material that you're jiggling to make the quarks do their thing and then do all the other stuff that you need to do. So all the other material that you need is all that hydrogen has to be processed after you've generated it. This is an insane machine, by the way. The tuning, I've never really done the math on the tuning fork. Oh my god, do not scale it up. You don't need to. But if you did, just be aware, you need 10 to the 15 cubic meters of space to hold all the hydrogen you would make out of a cubic meter of generator. But what if you did? I mean, what does 10 to the 15 cubic meter of space even look like? Well, again, 2 cubic meters did nothing to those numbers. So you would need, yeah, you would need 10. How do I even put one? Let's say we put the 1 on this side, right? Switch this from a. The problem is you can't like just. Can I just switch this into a, okay, positive integer, right? And then switch that into 42. No, that doesn't work. 15. Still doesn't work. E1 positive, 15 power, number that doesn't register. Because it's sad, and it doesn't know how to do. What if we had 14 or something? 14. Okay, 14 equals 41. There's a number we can actually work with, perhaps. Yeah, that makes the 42 that we need of cubic nanometers. Again, it's 10 to the 14 cubic meters to make the amount of... How is 14 such a beautiful number that it turns into an E41 is hilarious. And 15 is just a bad idea. Oh, what the fuck is that? Dude. 16, dude. No, 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 no. How is 14 so good? 13 is good. 14 is okay. Wait, if 12, 13, 14. Okay, hold on. 14. Okay, if you go per one and it goes per one on the other side, then it makes sense a little bit. So then we can extrapolate that and say for every one you go up one in the power of the cubic nanometer. Honey, I'm the guy who knows what I'm talking about. I'm lost. Anyway. Oh god, I don't know what movie we're going to be watching. I should really text to find out. We can do a part 2. This is long enough. You can just say that, again, with the atomic tuning fork technology, you're making a large amount of hydrogen. Now you need to process it, making a large amount of quarks, process it, make it into hydrogen, which is making more energy for you because of the reactions it takes to make hydrogen, but also the energy that's required, I guess. Or if you do the passive route, or the less energy using route, the colder method, then you can just make the hydrogen again. It's not too difficult. And then you're just making cubic meters of hydrogen, which you can constantly be sucking out of it for a tube, and then just fucking burn that. You don't need to make it into anything else. You don't even need to invest in fusing it into other things. You're just making matter easily out of a meter of something, and then you're just able to have hydrogen that technically, okay, could you compress it? Could you do anything else? Liquid hydrogen, whatever else, something, something. Immediately cool it, immediately shunt it off somewhere else so it can keep on being generated, cooled, and shunted. At that rate, you just have a nozzle of hydrogen that you're getting out of the cosmos, that you're generating out of literally nothing. Enjoy. Do I need to explain further? There is a lot more to this unpacking, and I don't have the time. Or whatever else. If I'm doing something, I need to check if I'm doing something. I checked something. Um, I'm waiting for a response. So let's watch a little bit more of this.
And then isn't readily available in space like it is on Earth. One of the biggest pros of this method
Okay,
is that it
hold on.
allows your creature to...
Again, you can make any type of matter that you want out of any of all this stuff. So you can make the oxygen, whatever else that you need, and then you can have all the farts that you need. You can just make a nozzle and just shoot it out into space. Who cares? You can also explode it, and that makes a larger amount of force and everything that you can make enriched stuff, which does even more thing than regular oxygen do, and all of that. You could go crazy with it. Guys, they're watching figure skating. It's not a movie. I thought it was going to be a movie. I think the last time the movie was canceled, it's like, oh, it's going to be a thing. It doesn't matter. The movie's tomorrow? Why is the movie tomorrow? What day is it? It's Tuesday. Why is the figure skating today and the movie tomorrow? It says movie in the, it also says movie Deadpool Wolverine on Wednesday. Got it. I'll watch. Why does it say movie in the... I'll be watching Deadpool tomorrow. Yeah, I will do that. Okay, let's keep going.
Move more abruptly and in a much more controlled way. If you want sharp changes in direction, all it needs to be able to do is precisely angle its emissions or be able to emit from several different directions. So unlike your solar sail creature, this guy is way more maneuverable.
Okay, so little problem with a nanometer. Okay, if you had a nanometer tuning fork, 80% of it again is used as the material for the tuning fork. So we're still being generous with that. Or we're still being conservative with that. I get those mixed up. I don't know why. And then this guy would have to be big in order to hold the amount of gas that we're capable of generating. Although, it depends on if we're making... Okay, here's the problem. They're talking about atomic hydrogen. Shut up. No. I'm talking about protons here. We don't need to think about hydrogen. You can make straight up just packed protons in a much denser space because no electrons involved. You could just make it into much denser protonium and neutronium. I literally said that in my comment at some point. So imagine just making neutronium. You don't have to think. It's way denser than you're just pooping out neutronium all the time. That's material that you can use to make matter and stuff. Armor that it has to hold itself together, and it does that a lot better if it has some protons involved or something. Gravity.
Another pro is that the exact chemical components involved, if you even want to get into that much detail, may require you to introduce some fictional elements, which is great because that means, within reason, any limitations on speed and capacity are up to you as the author.
I don't even need no fictional stuff. I can just generate neutronium from nothing. For real.
A potential con is that this is a pretty undignified way to get around, as our creature is essentially farting its way through space. If you were trying to have this being...
Now the other thing that I mentioned is that you can emit the gas and then pull it back into yourself, like grab it with a sponge, and then it doesn't like hit your ship and slow it down as it gets reabsorbed. So all of that poop and then reabsorbed is like, okay, it supplements it back to the top, and then you poot again. It's a renewable pooting. You don't have to keep on. You can do this in a confined area. You could just become poop, 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 poop all you like because the material can just keep on cycling its way up slowly and then poot out. Cycle it up slowly and poot out. That's a constant, like, it's like how a train engine does those puffs of air with its, um, the thing that drives the piston. Yeah, those poots. Only again, you're recapturing all of the poot because it's an internal system. So, because why not? All you have to do is go, and then it's there. You just pick it up again, and you go again, right? Just keep doing that. Why can't you just keep doing that in space? Why not? Like, you don't have to worry about it. Just keep going, right? Freaking Kirby up in here.
Taken seriously, it could be a bit challenging to get around that fact, both when thinking about readers and how in-universe human characters would react to its biology.
Okay, you could consider it to be like a blowing. You could consider it to be, and again, if you can blow, then you can, instead of farting, imagine you have Goku and he's just traveling on a fart cloud. Because he doesn't ever lose the cloud. He's able to control it and where it is. He just fart and it goes. And it's like that's silly that you can just go around on a fart cloud. Imagine whatever atmosphere you're using to do the poop, then you just poop and you go along, right? But imagine if you could just cycle it at a rate that, again, this is why I do vortex, because if you do a vortex, the swirling motion of the material that's going up at the same rate as the poot going out and down is a slower amount of effect of motion than the poot that finally goes out. And the rate of that motion as it goes up is just as fast. You could continuously just fountain your way through everything and just have an infinite fountain, and it doesn't get lost to through other means because it's a contained system. You can just keep doing that forever, and also not equal opposite reaction yourself back forward. You would just be moving forward because the motion through your cells and everything is kind of like a digestive tract or the capillary action stuff, where the whatever goes down and the other stuff goes up and stuff. And it's a similar thing. You can do this as you're moving. Yeah, you could just constantly be doing that. No reason why not.
But depending on the tone of your story, that may not be a problem. A more practical con is that this creature likely wouldn't have as easy a time traveling long distances as your solar sail creature, and may as a result be restricted to its own solar system. If you did want interstellar travel, you could have it do something like a huge burst of thrust and then a hibernation. But keep in mind that if your creature relies on something consumable to move, eventually that thing will run out.
So if all you have to do is muscle spasm to push something around, and then whatever else, it's only the base energy that it takes to do that spasm. If it's a contained system, then you don't have to just keep on injecting crap into space. You just move it through yourself and then hyper move it in the chamber that holds the, like, it does a push, and it's like the inside of the rocket and you pushing against it. As long as when you get to the back end, you're not exerting a force. Like, again, you're supplementing into a sponge or whatever. You're reducing your impact on the back end, you get more force on the front end. You move forward without doing anything with outside space. I mentioned that in the comment.
Travels between solar system, whatever it needs to fuel its movements needs to be something that's sort of universally available. The next idea I'm going to explore.
And again, the EM field is just universally available. You can just do whatever you want and have 1 liter of any atmosphere contained system, poot, 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 and repeat, and then, yeah, you should just be able to move infinitely. Why does this not work? It does. That's the problem. You can absorb things with minimum uh inert, like action opposite reaction type stuff, reversing the poot function that you're putting in. Like again, a sponge or some kind of dampening field, some kind of thing that stops it, like the copper stopping the magnet through the thing. You can do all sorts of stuff like that so that you shoot out the thing, it lurches you forward, slow it down as you collect it, cycle, repeat. It could be a certain amount of time between poots, but you could just poot your way over to wherever you want, as hard as you want, with as much mass as you want, to make as much acceleration as you want, and you would have to do kilograms of mass per kilogram of you to move you forward, technically. But again, there are functions that can do that with minimum, like, I don't know why people aren't thinking those terms, because you can do it. They're just not using the dampening field, the like magnetic confinement to slow it down or get it supplemented into a liquid. As it hits the liquid, it does barely any impact to all the other stuff around it, and the liquid can then just pull it through, and then whatever else, something. Like it would hit and it wouldn't exert force to the other side. There are ways of doing that. Another guy made a thing he was trying to do with magnetic or the microwaves, but his idea didn't involve enough force, energy. He was just using energy, and his materials, his idea was to have a direct angle. You don't want a direct angle, because half of that force is put in towards the opposite of what you want to do. Instead, you need it on a very fine slope. It has to be very small, so that all of the direction is directed in any other direction other than the opposite of travel. So when it pushes forward and then bounces back, it can be 1, slowed down before it even bumps into anything. 2, it can be redirected in a way that is very minimum and pretty much all of its energy, if not 80%, if not 90% of its energy is sent sideways. So you don't have any issues, right? There's like a very gradual curve is how that would work. But also, again, dampening field, some kind of sponge, whatever. Things like that. To collect the stuff, recapture, remove, put it back in. Like, yeah, you could just be... Like, again, you could do this with an asteroid where you shove it backwards. Imagine you shove an entire asteroid backwards, catch it with a kind of thing at the back of your ship that is like able to totally stop its momentum. An asteroid worth of material, not a physical asteroid which has mass and continued momentum, but each individual part has its own like thing. So when you push it all, it pushes you with the mass of an entire asteroid, but right, thousands of kilograms or whatever the hell you want to do, billions of kilograms, and then you are accelerated forward with that lurch, but then because its components are actually tiny, you can supplement it all, have its forces be minimalized as you capture it, and then re-emit it and do it again and cycle it, right? Like using a jet of sand. You don't even need to heat it up, you don't need to expand it, you just push it out.
Is giving your creature access to some sort of extra-dimensional travel, such as teleporting wormholes or space folding. This kind of writing is like...
Okay, this is a whole other spectrum of things, which I'm not getting into because I've gotten into it in other videos, and space folding, meh, it's very much, when you actually look at the mechanics involved in space folding, you're making like a black hole that spans the entire area, and then you literally, yes, a black hole, not a wormhole, a black hole that spans the area you're trying to traverse, and then you expand it, you make the black hole bigger and then contract, switch to the other side of it, make it bigger again, and then you're on the other side. You're going to distort all of space-time around you. It sucks for everyone. Don't do it. But anyhow,
to be critiqued pretty heavily because our understanding of spatial and temporal dimensions is theoretical and evolving, and there are a lot of different models to describe what could be possible when it comes to bending our understanding of these dimensions. People are likely to react to your portrayal based on a very limited understanding of what you're talking about. However, I do think this makes this a great point in history to have fun with these ideas. Science fiction is not a place to worry about whether or not the information you're using might get disproven later. It's a
and I've been talking about science fact.
Is to be inspired by the possibilities science is exploring the edges of right now. The most important thing is that whatever rules you put into place to explain how your extra-dimensional travel works stay logically consistent within your universe. If they travel through some new dimension where space is more compact, think about ratios, relative sizes, what effect traveling between these two dimensions has on your creature and on space as a whole. Think about how your creature's form might change and what would happen if something else tried to travel the same way they did. Is it possible to re-enter normal space from a different angle, so to speak, and be unrecognizable? If there are naturally occurring rifts in space that your creature knows how to find, think about how they're detectable and how the rest of the universe interacts with them. Are those rifts being pulled along by the same forces that move galaxies, or do they stay in place while everything else moves around and through them? Do solar systems ever get pulled out of place because of them? Let me know if you want a longer video about these types of dimensions, because there's a lot of interesting stuff to explore, and it's a topic I always have a lot of fun thinking about.
I absolutely love how her mind
Your
works.
home is your happy.
It's cool.
Explore, and it's a topic I always have a lot of fun thinking about. A pro of this mode of transportation is that it's basically magic. This gives you, as the author, a lot of freedom, and you can absolutely lean into not explaining too much because it's just beyond human comprehension. Just make sure that you...
It's beyond standard comprehension. Human comprehension is capable of it, because you're writing it in. But also, how do you really understand the exact thing about how it works? It's like, maybe you don't need to, but you do it anyway type thing. Like, you could have radiation without understanding how it works because uranium was already in the world in pockets everywhere. And so you can explain the sickness and whatever other thing, and then eventually you get science and you figure it out. And you write textbooks.
Have a good grasp of the rules you're working with, even if the characters you're writing don't, because readers will pick up on the inconsistencies even if you never precisely explain the logic you're working with, and your stories will be a lot richer if they feel like they could make sense. A great way to achieve this is to work in limitations. Maybe it's hard to travel short distances or to end up in precise locations. Maybe this method of travel is creating some sort of environmental crisis for the universe as a whole. A con of this method.
So the problem is the method of the vortex engine or the constant pooting, which is a similar offshoot to that, but the vortex engine is like a conveyor belt where mass is being pulled straight down through you, which forces you forward, and then slowly circles its way back up, and that energy of it moving up does not move you down, or does not move, yeah, it doesn't move you backwards, I should say, relative to your direction of travel. And also, again, it's a rotation, so you would have to have four of them to cancel each other out. Two can cancel each other out in one direction, four to cancel each other out in all spatial directions that would affect your trajectory, right? So you don't have anything pulling you this way, this way, or that way. So you're not going to change your direction. You're just going to keep on cycling everything down very fast, swirling back up slowly. And that is a constant stream that you can just keep on doing. So, fun. And you can just do that as long as you have the energy to do that. Generating the energy is a different story entirely. But again, the faster you go, the more you're interacting with things, which can then give you the ability to make an engine that works with the interactions of things. And there are so many different types of energy powers sources that the vortex engine just facilitates the motion component, and you don't really need a lot more than that to have just add a couple of things and you have power as well as like power generation, not just the motion.
Aside from whatever limitations you decide to put into place, is that it can be hard to explain in a way that doesn't feel like a physics lecture. Because this is so at the edges of what the average person understands, it's difficult to hint at answers and expect your readers to sort of fill in the blanks like you can more easily with the previous two creatures, and you have to write a fine line between leaving your audience lost and leaving them bored. And finally, the silliest option for space travel that I want to explore in this video is just actual magic. Maybe your creature is in some sort of religious alignment with the creators of the universe, and those creators allow it to be exempt from certain physical limitations. Maybe you develop a system of spells that are effectively the universe's back-end cheat codes. Maybe you invent a mythical substance that just works, and who knows how. Like with interdimensional travel, this is going to feel good or bad to your readers based on how well you follow your own internal logic. If I were writing this story, I would consider combining magic with mathematics or biology to help the creatures feel a bit more grounded in reality. For example, we know that nothing in the universe is still, and we're constantly updating our understanding of how exactly...
No stationary observers here.
Creatures that can just think where they want to be and then appear there, but if they don't accurately calculate their coordinates to account for that movement, they could end up accidentally stuck in the middle of a planet or trapped in a gravitational pull that's too strong to escape. Maybe whatever it uses to move puts a lot of stress on its body and causes it to deteriorate rapidly if it overuses its ability. Maybe it can break laws of physics that have to do with speed, but still has to be careful about how it enters and exits an atmosphere. The point is, your sci-fi setting can still feel very real, even if it contains magical elements, as long as you think through how they interact with existing physics. A couple other things to consider. I draw my creatures with eyes so they'd be fun to look at, but eyes are full of fluid and maybe not very...
Not all eyes are full of fluid. I also mentioned this, that the eyes could be made out of just the structures that you need. Like, you have photoreceptor cameras. They're not full of fluid. You don't need fluid to photorecept. And a machine type of being having photoreceptor type stuff with the structure of that, it's not beyond the realm of comprehension that there could be a thing that then makes photoreceptor type things that is not eyeball. Like you could make camera-like photoreceptor type things, doesn't have to be eyeball whatsoever. So you have that, and then you have the ability to not only see in every spectrum and many levels into the wider bands of spectrum and the denser bands of spectrum, so you can see in way larger range than what normal light can give you with our regular eyes. Oh, we can't see infrared or ultraviolet or something, K-Pax. And it's like, yes, we can. Turn off the lights. You can totally see ultraviolet. That was a myth in K-Pax. But imagine you could see beyond ultraviolet. That's what we can't see. And we just don't normally see beyond ultraviolet because for the movie they said we can't. And it's like, no, we can. But beyond ultraviolet we can't easily. It would be even more dim or whatever than the ultraviolet is, but you can still see in those spectrums. It just requires a lot of other things to. That's the thing. What if beyond ultraviolet, like in a multiple of the frequency, you would see like literally something that is doubled up, right? You would see that as extra ultraviolet frequency, but is actually a single, like half of the information of that, right? So you'd only be able to see every second trough, or every second peak, something like that. It's possible that you could have multiples and jumps like that, where even the thinner stuff that we normally can't see, we can see, but we're getting so much of that it's hard for our brains to then comprehend that what we're looking at is every fourth, third, eighth peak of that frequency, right? But we get that information, we just don't process it. It's totally within the realm of physics that we can do that. And with the difference between all the different cones that we have, we can combine things and then end up with a spectrum of light that is way bigger than just the regular rainbow spectrum. We just are not processing that information on our visual cortex. But we can. That's the thing. We can. Like the differences between some things. So if you have two of them trigger at once, you know that it's actually the difference between the one and the other. And you don't have to do the whole shape and the whole size of the thing, but you can say that it is that. And depending on the frame rate and whatever else, you can make augments to make your regular eyes be capable of all sorts of things with computer-aided technology. You don't need an extra camera. You just need to revamp what you're processing of the optic nerve and all of that, which is so easy to hack into. Like you could just expand your vision by tapping into that and adding your own interpretation of the extra information that the brain doesn't even look at because it's too much or it's not coherent, not understood. So it's not part of your perception, but it's there. It's all there. So like infrared sensors, you can do that. Extra whatever sensors you want, you can do that. Extra thin, extra wide, extra long frequency, amplitudes, whatever you want. There are ways to do that. It just needs to be like programmed in. And it's all there. Your eyes are capable of it. Guaranteed. There's no reason why not. I'm not making shit up. What is that?
Practical for a creature that hangs out in a vacuum where fluids expand. Also, I kept this video focused on movement, but to build a creature that feels like it makes total sense, you're going to need to also think about how it stays pressurized, whether or not it can enter an atmosphere, and what keeps it safe when it's doing so. What senses make sense for it to have evolved to be as optimized for space as possible. For example, maybe it can't hear or smell, but it can see more wavelengths than we can. Think about its life cycle and how it feeds itself.
What did I just say?
And social habits, and what draws its interest and informs its choices. Even if your creature isn't sentient, these will be relevant questions to consider. And finally, I am making headway toward qualifying for YouTube monetization.
Yes, they're doing good job. They already should be at YouTube monetization. If they aren't already, why are they not? What do you mean? How are you not? Okay, I get this many views in my shorts. Alright, good job. Dude, you freaking deserve so much more than this. What the hell? Like, there we go. We got 36 million. This is possible. I mean, obviously it is. Not only is it possible, but I figured out ways that I could hack bullshit and whatever something.
But in the meantime, I wanted to make it possible for viewers who are passionate about what we're building here to support it personally. So I've set up a Buy Me a Coffee, which is a bit like Patreon, but less focused on locking you into a subscription and more on creating a convenient place for one-time donations. So if you want to support this by buying me a coffee, check.
I love that whole thing. A bunch of people buy you coffee, and then suddenly you have $10,000 because a bunch of people gave like a toonie, and it was only like a certain amount of people based on the number of views, and all you did was you gave a toonie. But then suddenly they have a lot of money. They could do stuff, have better art and whatever things, and survive. Do it! And I need something like that for myself.
That out, and there are more great things coming in the future, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss them. Huge shout out to everyone who's on board already. You guys are amazing, and I'll see y'all in the next one.
God, I love that. Go watch it yourself. Support this person. They're cool. It reminds me so much of a bunch of different people who do these things. There's a lot of work to put into it and everything else. But the thing is, yeah, no, you can just shake a tree and get you can just shake a thing and get quarks to emit, and then combine them into hydrogen, and again, excluding electrons, then you just combine and make neutrons, and then you combine and make heavier elements, and then you add the electrons, and then you actually have those things, and the matter can be extremely more dense than like hydrogen. Freaking proton soup and proton neutron soup is way more dense than hydrogen, because imagine the shell that's around a hydrogen and having to bounce around and then not needing that because the electrons aren't involved yet. And then you can have like 100 times more dense matter than and whatever, and it would be very heavy. So you'd have to be moving it quickly. Like, the shaker thing is crazy, and I know I'm not entirely coherent when it comes to the numbers, but just 1 nanometer of the stuff should be able to make you enough hydrogen. You could easily just generate it constantly by okay, so the amount of power that it takes the amount of force required in order to make the splitting of quarks, it's a lot of force for the amount of space. That's why if you use a certain resonating thing, then all you need is the frequency, and it does that kind of motion. Or you could have an amplifier as well. Add that to it. Yeah, why not? And then the amplified force is like a set of pinchers that when it starts at one level, it starts here, but then expands to out here real easily. And that's all you need. You need something small like that. That's all you need to make the quarks happen. But it has to be strong, sturdy, and also able to shake like that and not deteriorate. But then you're working with like zzz, like freaking mom's vibrator can make enough hydrogen to power the spaceship. Technically, not really. Like again, the frequencies of terahertz and the frequencies of um, again electrons. It's so easy to get. You think it takes a lot of power to gather electrons. It doesn't. It doesn't take a lot of power to do electron stuff. It does take a lot of power to like you think to move them and stuff, but there's ways of doing it that they just we're getting started on it. There's ways of compacting it. So a micro atomic atom or a micro electron accelerator is like you don't need a lot of power to accelerate electrons, and then you can make the X-rays, and all of this stuff can happen inside a microchip. The entire process of making new matter can be the size of a nanoscopic microchip. And then you're just eking out quarks. Collect that, turn into whatever matter you want, right? Maybe use some energy for Bose-Einstein condensate. You're using very little power at that point, genuinely, in order to make all this happen. The amount of power needed in this, it is a very complex system. It is very complex. It's just, it does not have to require a lot of power for a tiny amount of thing to vibrate at the right frequency to do the quartz or the quark, the things that are the components of atoms. Those fundamental particles to shake in the right way that you're constantly generating more quarks. Like you have to rip them apart and you have to rehold them and then separate them again from each other. And then some of them have to be flung off to then become the thing that is whatever you're making. And it's fine and everything. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.